Joining us now, Major Glenn Ignacio, retired U.S. Air Force Special Operations Commander. Major, always great to see you. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Great to see you as well.
The tone of this just a few moments ago was very respectful, quite different from what we saw in February. With that said, we're also seeing Russia continuing attacks after Friday's meeting in Alaska, including on Kharkiv overnight. A dozen people died, including children. What kind of message is this sending? Does Putin really want peace?
I think he wants peace. I mean, that was definitely dedicated. I think the biggest thing, especially in the initial of what I saw in that room, was it was Team EU, Team US, which is much more formidable for Putin. He always says, hey, I'll wait to the next president to change things in the US. But as far as the attacks, now, the attacks are always going to continue until there is a ceasefire. It just seems like there's an escalation, and this is going to be a continued escalation until something comes about. So the attacks I would have expected, unfortunately, like I said, my team leaders there are seeing it. All of these attacks that I've seen have always been on civilian homes and houses and apartment buildings. So as horrific it is, it's just becoming more visible to the people of the world. This is the way it's actually been for this entire time.
Like I mentioned, this multilateral meeting that we're watching right now has now moved into the Oval Office. What are you hoping to see from the meeting at the White House today?
Definitely want to see progression to get to these points of the tenets that will get to the end of this war. But the parts that are polarizing, first of all, I think that the security guarantees of sort of like an Article 5 protection is important. I think, again, hearing that it's Team Europe, Team US is pivotal because it's not just US. It's got to be everybody that will be sustained for years to come. The hard part is what Russia is going to do. Russia has to sign to say, hey, we're never going to attack again. It's really interesting because the Duma comes into basically the parliament comes into enforcing those things on the Kremlin that basically carries out war. So that's going to be interesting in Russia itself. But there has to come to the line. The land concessions is the biggest thing, and that's the one we probably should talk about because they're going to be talking about this for a while.
On the tip of my tongue, sir. On Friday, President Trump proposed a peace deal that would see Ukraine give us the Donbas region. We know Zelensky has been against that. Even though this region is occupied by Russian troops currently, no word on what concessions Russia would make. You've said from the very beginning, since this war started, it's likely Ukraine will have to give up some territory to get a ceasefire. Do you stick with that? Do you think that's the sentiment that needs to progress forward?
Yeah, I'm trying to come up with something else that's there. Maybe it's a buffer zone, but here's the point: is that right now at this ability, and you see in the past 3 years that the lines have been moving actually recently towards the benefit for Russia. So at this point, Ukraine doesn't have the ability to push Russia out as they stand. I mean, their draft is actually for people 25 and older, which are married and have kids. Until they draft 18 to 25, they're not going to have a manpower to actually try to do this. So there would have to be a significant change. But again, I don't see Ukraine pushing Russia out. So at the same time, Russia wants to keep that territory. This is going to be one of the biggest contentions between the both. The only thing I can think of, if they made this entire area a buffer zone between the two, I don't see that happening. And how would you even control that? So as I've said in the past, I think it's one of those, and I hate to use the term, but it's like you have an infected arm and you got to cut it off so it doesn't affect the entire body. And I feel if this war continues, that it's going to be for the benefit of Russia. And again, I support Ukraine completely, but it's difficult, and this is what they have to hash out today.
I want to read back something the NATO Secretary General said a moment ago. He says Trump's offer of security guarantees is the first breakthrough we've seen of peace. Putin said that the U.S. and European allies could offer Ukraine a security guarantee like NATO. It's a mutual defense mandate. Could this be the workaround that you mentioned? Could it lead to a peace deal?
It could. I mean, that's one of the things that would be very troubling or at least problematic to Putin. If you look at the very beginning, this was a special operations against Ukraine, Russia against Ukraine. The propaganda has been rather significant and subtle that everybody sort of jumped on. Now, Russia is saying it's Russia against NATO. So that changes everything for Russia and everybody that's their opinion of this. So if that's the case, what would they allow for forces from the EU and everything to be present in Ukraine? I think that with U.S. interests, with mining, rebuilding, and everything, and having those people and those citizens present, we would have to protect them. There is some security in that. But would he, or Putin, would he allow troops from other countries in there? This is, again, one of those things that has to be negotiated, where the UN would be great, but they're ineffective as far as trying to defend anything from a combat standard, as we see in other places of the world.
Major, my next question is simple, but I think it holds a lot of weight. Can we trust anything Putin says or any promises he's making?
Verbally, no. It's all going to have to be in writing, standard, public. Everybody needs to know it. And in all honesty, this trilateral agreement or this trilateral meeting, I got a feeling all the terms are going to have to be established between the two of them. That this trilateral meeting is basically a signature saying, hey, this is what we're doing. I don't see the two of them negotiating anything in that meeting. So I think that would be the signature or signatory time. But I absolutely, from verbal, no, we haven't seen it. And peace agreements, or excuse me, ceasefire agreements are difficult because, as we've seen in the past, you just need one person to fire to completely negate it.
Right.
So, what would the terms of ceasefire be? So, I think a peace agreement is better. But again, can't go verbally. He's never stood up for it before.
I want to show our viewers what Secretary of State Marco Rubio said this on Sunday about progress being made. Let's take a quick listen.
Our goal here is to have a peace agreement to end this war, okay? And obviously we felt, and I agreed, that there was enough progress, not a lot of progress, but enough progress made in those talks to allow us to move to the next phase. If not, we wouldn't be having Zelensky flying all the way over here. We wouldn't be having all the Europeans coming all the way over here. Now understand, and take with a grain of salt, I'm not saying we're on the verge of a peace deal, but I am saying that we saw movement, enough movement to justify a follow-up meeting with Zelensky and the Europeans.
Are you seeing the movement the Secretary of State is alluding to, Major?
Yeah, I mean, again, seeing this Team EU, Team US, and having all these individuals in one area, one meeting is absolutely significant. Yeah. As far as, again, the nice thing about it is they've repeated that Zelensky has to make this decision because all of this has to be on his shoulders, not the negotiation of the US, the EU. It has to be on his shoulders. But that is going to be the part of what is going to be acceptable. Again, in their constitution is they're not going to release that information or that territory. You don't want that aggressor to get that territory. But again, what is going to stop it? And Russia, unfortunately, controls more of the conflict now. So Ukraine wins some of these combat engagements, but the war seems to be winning by Russia. So I hope people understand that, and I really would like to see the killing of people stop because that's happening in Ukraine. Too many civilians have died.
Major Glenn Ignazio, I really appreciate your analysis, sir. Thank you.